Hey guys, Joe at Small Home Off Grid Prepping. Not coming to you from sunny Florida today. We're coming to you from cloudy, wet, cold Florida today. We're down to about maybe 45 degrees right now. It's pretty chilly. I know our viewers in Canada are probably laughing at me right now, our viewers from up north, but for Florida this is cold. Today though, we're going to be talking about sub panels. I've had some viewers contact me, mostly by email. I don't really have any comments, I don't think. Their electricians told them that they need to install a sub panel, and they're asking me what is a sub panel. So we're going to cover that today, okay? And the reasons that you may be told you need a sub panel, there may be a few reasons. Here in Florida, we install a lot of what's called package units for air conditioners, which means you might have most houses will have an air conditioner where you have one piece inside, one piece outside. A package unit actually it's all one piece, okay? It's both the air conditioner and a heater in one. They run on two separate circuits, okay? The AC compressor is not going to be on the same circuit as the heater that's in there. So one of the options that we have in that case is what's called a sub panel. National Electric Code will basically allow for 3 different options in this case. One, you can just run individual circuits. Just run one breaker for the heat, one breaker for the air conditioner compressor. Bring that directly out of the panel and then connect them separately into the unit. The other way is you can have what's called internal breakers that you get from the factory, which means you run one heavy load into there. You might run an 80 amp circuit into the unit and then split up, say, I don't know, maybe 30 for the air conditioner and 60 for the heater, something like that there. And yeah, I know the 80 and the 90 don't match, but we'll get into that in a different video. They don't have to. So those are a couple reasons you need a sub panel, those are a couple options for connecting that. But the sub panel is what I usually used to like to do. What that means is I'd put in like a 100 amp sub panel, okay, which is a separate panel mounted next to the air conditioner, and I'd put in a 60 amp breaker for the heater, and I'd put in like a 30 or whatever it calls for. It's on the little sticker, will tell you. But as an example, I put in a 30. So I'm actually breaking up my circuits at a sub panel, okay. So with an air conditioner package unit, that's 3 different ways that code would allow you to actually split up your circuits over there. Other reasons you may be told you need a sub panel is all your circuits in here are full. You have a panel. I've had a lot over the years where people want to put in a jacuzzi, and we come out to the panel and the panel is completely full. All the spaces are taken up. Well, again, you have options at that point depending on what your panel is. Certain panels will allow for what's called tandem breakers. What a tandem breaker is, it's a breaker just like this one over here. As you see here, this is a breaker, one handle on it. It takes up one space in the panel, connects right into the little pin of the bus bar there. What a tandem is the same thing, but instead of one handle, there'd be 2 handles. Instead of one screw down here, there'd be 2. So you can actually pull 2 circuits off of the one breaker. They also make what's called quads, which a quad would basically be 4 spaces. It will take up 2 spaces, but it's going to be 4 handles. Quads will come in what's called a 120 or a 240, which means a lot of times you'd see the center handle, the 2 centers, would be 240, so you can supply a sub panel or something like that with 240 volts, but the 2 end ones will stay 120, or it could be what's called a 240, which means they're all 240. Okay, so there is different options other than putting in a sub panel. Not all panels will allow for tandems. Okay, not all panels will allow for quads to be put in there. I know Cutler Hammer, I believe it is, their CH panel, they don't make a quad. I believe they do make tandems. I recall, yeah, I have seen tandems with there, but they don't make a quad, okay? You can't make a quad. Siemens does make a quad. So these are some of the reasons that you want to have, an electrician might tell you that you need to put in a sub panel. Technically this here, let me show you guys, because this is a sub panel. I know you've seen my other videos, and this does look like it's a main breaker panel, and it technically is a main breaker panel, but this is not my first means of disconnect. There's a couple things here, okay? For one, the panel itself, when you put in a sub panel, okay, you'll notice here, this green screw that I have right over here, this green screw right here, it's not screwed in, okay? The reason is that's what's called a bonding screw. Your first means of disconnect, and I'll show you in a minute. I know I haven't shown you guys my main panel before. We've actually looked at this panel out here. Your first means of disconnect, okay, your grounds and neutrals need to be bonded together. As you see here, I have a ground wire coming up here, and I have a neutral over here. And let me just do that again. I have a ground wire up over here. See if you guys can see it. I have a ground wire up over here, okay, here we go, and I have my neutral over here. They're not bonded together, okay, they are completely separated. Your first means of disconnect, your neutral and your ground do need to be bonded together, okay, and once you leave your first means of disconnect, you need to separate your grounds and your neutrals, okay, and that's what your electrician would do. Basically, what a sub panel is like I said, a sub panel is another panel being added when you need a panel somewhere else. You need heavier electricity, you're not going to run one circuit. Let's say that you need to pull 100 amps to a barn. because you want to run electric into your barn. Well, you're not going to run different circuits off your panel. You'll put in what's called a sub panel, okay? And then you'll put breakers in that sub panel. So let me show you real quick my other panel, and then I'll explain to you how the sub panel actually gets put together. Okay, so this is my other panel. This is my main panel over here. You see on this side right over here, we have the meter can right over there, and then the feeders from the meter can right over here are coming up, and they're connected to the main breaker right up over here. Okay, now this panel here, this is the first means of disconnect. So you see the same screw right over here. This screw is screwed in, okay? It is bonded. The grounds and the neutrals in this panel have been bonded together, right? And the way this panel here is actually feeding my other panel is, like I said, this up over here is the power coming in. You have L1, you have L2, okay? Then when you look down here, this is what's called a pass-through panel or a feed-through panel. These wires right over here, this one right over here, and this one right over here, these are the wires that are feeding my other panel. This is the ground that's heading to the panel that I always work with, you guys see. This is the neutral over here, heading to the panel that you guys always see. So this actually here, this is my main panel right over here. With the meter can and all that, it's been put on the pedestal. So yeah, like I said, this is my main panel and this is feeding the other panel. So let's go back to the other panel and I'll explain to you how the sub panel works. Now, when you install a whole house generator standby, we haven't talked a lot about the standby generators, but your electrician, when he puts that in, he's going to tell you that your main panel where your grounds and neutrals are bonded together, he's going to tell you he has to separate that, because when they put in a transfer switch, now that's not your first means of disconnect anymore. Your main panel is not your, your main disconnect. Now the transfer panel is, which means your transfer panel has to have your grounds and your neutrals bonded together. But now what was your main panel is no longer the first means of disconnect, and now they will have to separate your grounds and your neutral from there. So that's with the standby generator when they put in the transfer switch. So as far as the sub panel goes, that's completely different. You're mostly feeding that off of an existing panel. Even if it's one that has the neutrals and grounds bonded together, when you put in the sub panel, then you will separate them from there. Okay, so you guys recall this from the other video. This is when we were putting in a generator transfer panel, and I was showing you not a lot of differences in the sub panel, but there is differences in the sub panel. For one thing, this feeder breaker here, which goes to the receptacle, this is no longer needed. We wouldn't be using that. This breaker here, there's different options. Okay, so just like in the other video, what's going to happen is when an electrician comes out to put in your sub panel, first he's going to put a breaker in your existing main panel. Okay, that breaker is going to feed into a couple different ways. Now, as you see on the top over here, this panel has lugs that connects to the main bus bar. This would be L1 and L2. So when I'm connecting the electric wires to this, where I connected them down here at the breaker, I could connect these two wires here, the red and the black, up into these lugs right over here. Okay. Or I can use a breaker and actually make this a main breaker sub panel, which means I can turn the power off right here at the panel. Whereas if I'm connecting to the main lugs up over here and I want to cut the power coming into the panel, then I would have to go back to this other panel over here and turn this breaker off. Okay, so there's a couple ways that this can be fed. It can be fed into a breaker, which is called a main breaker sub panel. It's just a branch breaker, but we still refer to it as a main breaker. Could go into the main lugs as well. Okay, so the connection from when we talked about the generator transfer panel and talked about this are not a lot different. Sub panels, like I said, this one would be right next to the panel, okay, generator transfer panel. A sub panel could be anywhere, okay, like this sub panel here, which is working as my, again, it's not a main panel, okay, but yeah, it looks identical to a main panel, but it is still a sub panel. This one, the panel I just showed you, is about 120 feet away from this one, okay, so most of your time, your sub panel is not going to be right next to your other panel like this one is here. So you're going to have to pull wires, right? So if this is in your garage, your panel, your electrician may come up through the attic with the wire and then come back out the soffit somewhere. Kind of like I did this for this panel over here. I came out the soffit here, but that's, for my branch circuits. But same type of theory, same type of thing. So your electrician, like I said, may run your wire through the attic. If you have an outside panel where he's going to come off with a sub panel, then he would just come out the bottom like I've come out on these ones over here. So a lot of different ways, but your sub panel's pretty well not going to be right next to your main panel, more than likely. At my home here, I actually have 4 sub panels on my property. We've got a pretty good sized property, and I have 4 sub panels. I have the main I just showed you, I have this one, and then I have 2 more sub panels here. So like I said, these HOTS, neutrals will connect the same way. That's it. They connect to your neutral bar, your ground bar, that's it over there. The sub panel itself, like I said, your connection can be done through a breaker, could be done through the main lugs up over here as well. And then what's going to happen, like I said, in a sub panel, and you can see this has been separated. You can see that this neutral here is sitting on this plastic piece, and it's completely isolated from the panel over here. At the top here, if you look, these two bars are bonded together with this piece of metal right over here. Now, if I wanted to separate those, and I was going to use this as my grounding bar for whatever reason, and I wanted to use this as my neutrals, I can simply take these screws out. I can remove this piece right over here, and then that will isolate these two over there. Not a need to do that on this panel for this application, which again, I'm not even putting this panel in. This is a demonstration panel. It's an interior panel. It's not even good for the outside. First rain doesn't even fill up with water. But this here, you can see the grounding bar is actually bolted directly to the panel, so that bonds the panel, right? What happens if you have a hot wire like this over here, and let's say, but whatever, the wire comes loose. Let's say there's a wire nut in here, like we put some wire nuts over here, right? One of these connects to the breaker. So let's say this wire nut burned up and came off, and it hits the side of this panel over here. And instead, by the panel being bonded, instead of this being energized and someone could walk up and touch it and become electrocuted, the breaker would trip. Okay, if the hot wire hits the side of this metal here, then it trips the breaker, and that's called bonding the panel, right? So this being the ground bar here being screwed directly into the metal of the panel, that bonds this panel. So if anything were to happen, it's safely bonded. So like I said, sub panels are not that big a deal if your electrician tells you that you need one. There's a couple ways he can put it in. From there, like I said, once you have a sub panel, then you have another panel in that area. So if you have like a 100 amp panel that you've run to a shed, or you've run to a barn, or you've run to something like that, now you have multiple spaces that you can put breakers in, so you continue to add breakers. If you want to add lights outside, and let's say your panel, your main panel, the lights would be 200 feet away, but you put your sub panel in, they're only 50 feet away, well, guess what? You're going to use that sub panel. It makes more sense, right? So that's a lot of reasons. Like I said, from the generator transfer panel, there's a lot of similarities to this, to how this would be connected. So you can run your hots through here, you can run your hots through here, you're going to connect your neutral, you're going to connect your ground, your electrician is going to separate those in the sub panel. They will not be bonded together, right? And other panels like the one I just showed you, my main panel, if I wanted to take my ground wire here and put it over here on the neutral, I can do that because they're bonded together. In a sub panel, I can't do that. I have to keep those two separated, okay? So like I said, from there you're just going to add breakers into whatever circuit you want. We've run a lot of sub panels. Another good reason you do a sub panel on a shed or like a barn, you have to have a means of disconnect at the shed or the barn, okay? That is not your panel. It's going to be right there. Reason being, if your shed or barn were to catch on fire, or even your home, okay? There's a lot of reasons we have safety features in the home, but one of the first things the fire department is going to do, they're going to come out and have these big saws and they start chopping up the building, okay? If they have live circuits within that building and they're running saws through it, it can become potentially dangerous for them. So they have to have what's called a means of disconnect to cut all the power from the outside without pulling the meter, without smashing the meter, without doing anything. They basically have to be able to turn off a switch just like this here and cut power to that shed or that barn. And that's called your means of disconnect, and it's safety for the fire department, all right? So in a shed or a barn, you could use what's called a standard disconnect to do that, but it makes more sense in a lot of cases just to run a sub panel out there to have multiple circuits. You can have a lighting circuit out there, you can have whatever. A lot of people here in Florida want to put air conditioners in their sheds or their barn. Well, that also gives you the extra amperage as well to do something like that. So sub panels, if you guys have any questions, then let me know. Like I said, there's not a lot to cover. I didn't plan on spending a long time on this video because like I said, the hooking up of the sub panel is not that big a deal for an electrician who's been doing this for a long time. Just so you can understand, and you know, like I say in all my videos here, when it comes to electric, there is no such thing as a DIY electrician. I'm not showing people these things so somebody can learn how to do this and go out and do it themselves. I'm basically learning, I'm showing you guys this, so when an electrician comes out to your house, you understand things, all right? One of the big things that keeps coming up with my comments, if you guys have seen it, is what we've talked about before, okay? You see my wires here? These wires all have a gradual sweep in them, right? None of my wires have a hard bend. So if you pay attention to the comments on my different videos, a lot of people are questioning that. They're saying, you know, oh, you can bend this. I'm going to explain to you guys basically why you don't want to bend a wire. Pretty well like this here, okay? You see, I just wrapped that around my finger and I have a sharp bend over here. What just happened is these metals are bonded together, what's called grain boundaries, and by changing this, what I did is I just stretched the outside here, okay? So the inside diameter got tighter, but the outside stretched, right? So what happens now, that changes the grain boundaries, okay? When you bend this wire too much over here like this, the outside diameter over here where the metal has bonded together, that's called grain boundaries, and they'll actually split and they cause little cracks in there, microscopic cracks, but little cracks. That will distort the flow of electrons though, okay? That is the whole problem with that, is that will distort the flow of electrons coming through here. Electricity travels on the outside of the wire, does not travel on the inside of the wire, so even though it's microscopic, when you distort this wire along this point over here, then you're going to change the flow of electrons coming through here. You will create resistance. Resistance creates heat, okay? Will it burn up at that point? I've never seen a wire burn up at a bend, okay? It does a lot of different things in there, which we'll get into in different videos. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but like I said, I keep seeing it come up on my comments here about bending wires and this and that. So this is part of the reason why you want to gradually sweep it over here, right? What I just did by bending this wire here, I created the possibility that I distorted the wire along this point over here. And do I even know that I did that? It's an insulation. No, I don't know that I did that. I have no clue what I just did to this wire here. However, when I'm in the habit as an electrician by sweeping all my wires, then I know for a fact that I haven't distorted that wire whatsoever, okay? So, this is a little tip because, like I said, this keeps coming up over here. I wanted to address it real quick. So, guys, have any questions on sub panels? I don't cover a lot on the sub panel today because there's not a lot to cover. If you've already watched my generator transfer panel, the connections are a lot the same. Difference being here is this could also be a main lug as well, which is, I have no main lugs over here whatsoever. But this could be a main lug as well, like my other panel you see there. Basically, it has a 200 amp breaker. It's a feed-through panel. These are the wires right here. This is the neutral here, and these are my two hots right here and here coming in. Oh, that's what I showed you connected to the lugs on the other panel. So, like I said, this actually is a sub panel here. Guys, have any questions? Like I said, comment down below. I know I didn't cover a super lot on this today, but there's not a super lot to cover. You know, separating your grounds, your neutrals, your different ways that you can connect to a branch breaker here and call it a main breaker, or connect to your lugs up over here. So, like I said, a few different ways you can do a sub panel, but also a lot of reasons an electrician may tell you that you need a sub panel. This particular panel over here, I don't have any tandems in here, I don't have any quads in here, and I'm not even sure. It kind of looks to me like the bottom part over here doesn't take those, because you can see the little tab right over here sticking out. Whereas if you come up on this one over here, I don't see any tabs, so no, there's one over there. Some of them, like I said, if you see a circuit that says, a panel that says 2040 or 2030, what that means is you have 20 standard circuits, and I think this one's actually 40. If I recall right, I think this panel is a 40-40, so it doesn't allow for any tandems. When I bought it, I'm pretty sure it was a 40-40. But if you have a panel that says like 2030 or 2040, what that means is you have 20 standard circuits in the panel, okay? However, that panel would allow for tandems either up to 30 or up to 40. I mean, there is like 20, 2040s, 2030s, whatever. This one, like I said, the more I think about it, this was a 40-40. So this panel doesn't allow for any tandems, doesn't allow for any quads. But that's what that means. If you look at a panel and you go to buy a panel and it says like 2030 or 2040, that basically means you're buying a 20 circuit panel, but you can put special breakers in called tandems or quads, and you can actually increase that to a 40 circuit panel. So, like I said, guys, you have any questions on this, just comment down below. Let me know. I'll try to get a little more in detail on this here. But that is some reasons that an electrician will tell you that you need a sub panel, and when he goes to put it in, that's basically how he's going to put it in. If you guys like this, comment here. We're going to have a lot more on these different things here. If you like this, comment again down below. Subscribe, hit the notification buttons, because I do have a lot more coming out. But again, comment down below, and I'll answer them for you. So anyways, guys, have a great day. We'll see you on the next one.